Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to another Opposition View show where we are looking ahead to our next League Cup tie against Fleetwood Town. And for that, I am joined by Fleetwood Town reporter Tom Sandells. Warm welcome to the show, Tom. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
You're more than welcome. Of course, we were discussing this just before we started. You're not actually a Fleetwood fan, are you? You just work as a reporter?
Yeah, cover the club, and speak to Joe Barton every week. Keep in touch with the club and things that are happening there, and get a story in the paper at least every day.
That's brilliant to hear. And of course, you actually support Preston, am I right?
Yeah. So there's a bit of a link there, I suppose, the David Moyes link and all that. But yeah, I'm a North End fan for my own sins. Someday we'll get promoted, I'm sure, but whether it's anytime soon, I'm not sure. Yeah, exactly.
And there's another little tie-in with the Invincibles because I think we'll be playing a Highbury. Am I not mistaken?
What was that, sorry?
Yeah, there's a little connection to the Invincibles there because I think we'll be playing a Highbury.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Fleetwood and the big thing with Highbury is the old fan machine. I don't know if you've heard about that yet or not, but basically because you're right on the coast at Fleetwood, the wind is a nightmare, and it's something that will definitely cause a problem for Everton because they won't be used to it. Fleetwood generally are used to it, so they can deal with it, but it's always adds an extra element.
Oh, that's interesting to consider. First of all, of course, we're going to start with Fleetwood's performances so far this season. How have Fleetwood performed so far this season?
They've not done too bad, to be fair. Disappointing at the weekend. They conceded twice in the last few minutes of injury time against Peterborough when they were 1-0 up, which would obviously with being an Everton podcast, how much people follow League One or whatever, but Peterborough are tipped to be right up there this season, and would have been a really good result. Won all the other games so far, so it is a good start, but it's not a finished Fleetwood Town side by any stretch. They still, Joe Barton speaking, still wants 4 or 5 to come in and things like that. So it's a good start, but...
And how long is the transfer window?
It's still open for another few weeks, another 3-4 weeks, early October, I think.
Same as the Premier League, is it?
Yeah, pretty much. And then there's a few weeks where they can still make domestic transfers. But the big thing for clubs in League One, League Two, Championship is sort of a drop-down effect. So where players that are no longer needed at bigger clubs and things like that, where then they come available later on in the window, and those are the people that Fleetwood are going to try and go for, try and sign from above. Obviously, they brought in people like Mark Duffy, who's just come from Sheffield United and players like that. So that's kind of their approach. They do try and sign from above and improve that way.
And how has that been working out for you? Of course, last season, if I remember right, didn't you guys get in the playoffs and you weren't far away from promotion? You missed out very close, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, had the season carried on, Fleetwood, in my opinion, would have been in the top 2 because the form they were in, I personally think was pretty much the best in the country. They were playing everyone around them, all around the top 6, and they were winning all the games. They drew last minute against Sunderland, but other than that, they were beating all the teams around them, Wickham, Peterborough, all those sorts of clubs. They were a bit unfortunate to drop into 6th from 5th at the time, but there was so little in that playoff area. But had they carried on, I do think they'd have been right in there for the automatics. And Joey Barton thought the same. And I think that's kind of the aim this season. But there's been a few players leave. One of them going back to Everton in Lewis Gibson, who I thought was a class act last season. He looked better than League One. So I mean, there's no surprise that he's not there anymore. They've lost basically. They played a back 3 last season. All 3 were for loan players, and they've all gone back. So there's been a bit of a rebuild this season.
Just to touch on Lewis Gibson, actually, this was actually a question I was going to ask you later down the line in the show. How did he get on at Fleetwood? Like, what was his qualities? We haven't really seen much of him at Everton, of course.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought he just looked like. I mean, like I say, he just looked like a class act. I mean, the only thing, it's a bit of a niche sort of comparison because I'm probably naming a player that especially listeners don't know, but Fleetwood had a player called Ben Davies on loan who's now at Preston, and he's a similar type of player. They're both left-footed, and it's one of those where if the ball's coming in towards his head, he's the type of player, Lewis Gibson, that instead of heading it, he'd rather take a step back, take it on his chest, even if he's under pressure, and play out from the back. So he's very calm, very composed, and that isn't to take away from his ability to win a head or anything like that, because sometimes you get the conception that if they're calm and composed and they like to play out from the back, sometimes they lose those tough battles. They don't really come across like that. Yeah, didn't really come across like that. I think how involved he'll be this season at Everton, I don't know, but at the very minimum, I think he needs to be loaned out to Championship level.
Well, that's exactly what's about to happen. I think he's meant to be going to Reading on loan.
Right. Yeah, that'd be a good move for him. He's definitely good enough, in my opinion. Like you say, you mentioned the playoffs. I thought he was good in those playoffs, and but for an unbelievable first leg, it could have been a lot different. But even saying that, Fleetwood didn't win either of the legs. So as much as they beat,
was it you lost out to? Was it
Wickham?
So they ended up going up. So
yeah. So the second leg ended 2-2, but Fleetwood were completely in control. But even then, Wickham still come away with a draw. So it's fair play to Wickham on throughout that. But there was definitely more to come from Fleetwood, and it's always going to be a difficult scenario after the time off, I suppose.
Yeah, of course, and of course it's disappointing to miss out on promotion through the playoffs, and sides can often struggle the year after. We've seen it happen before, but it seems like there's a team being built there. And what's your aim for this season? Promotion?
Yeah, the aim definitely will be promotion. I mean, as you mentioned, Joey's spoken about that there's not been a hangover, because, like you say, you can see that. So he's been quite pleased that there hasn't been a hangover. But the aim's definitely to be, I'd say, minimum top six, because if you finish in the top six, I mean, you can never sort of say for sure how a season is going to go, what's going to happen, who knows, injuries in COVID, for example, is a case in point. But I think the minimum expectation will be top six. And I think if you're Joey Barton, though you won't probably say it, you'll be hoping for higher. But again, that depends on who they're able to bring in these next few weeks, because they do need new faces, and if nothing else, they need a bit more depth. Yeah,
I mean, with that in mind, we're going to look on the actual members of the Fleetwood squad. What would you say is the main sort of focal point for this team? Who's the danger man who Everton will have to be careful of?
I think it's not quite as a kind of side. And again, like I'll try and do something for listeners that won't necessarily follow League One. If you look at, I mean, they'll probably know Peterborough last season. Everyone knows Ivan Toney, who's now gone to Brentford. He was the main man, sort of thing. Fleetwood's not quite as pronounced as that. Paddy Madden is the main goal scorer. Paddy Madden is generally the one who pops up in and tap it in the 6-yard box and has finished pretty much top scorer in every season.
He's been around for quite a while, and he has always had a good scoring record at League One level.
Yeah, but it's not that sort of scenario where they'll give the ball to Paddy and just go, you do your thing, because he's not that type of player. He's the type, more of a poacher type. Callum Camps has come in this summer from Rochdale and has hit the ground running, got a few goals from midfield, which was the idea. And then you've still got Paul Coots, Glenn Whelan and Mark Duffy in midfield, who, everyone knows what they're about and what they can do. Is that the
Glenn Whelan who played for Stoke for years?
Yeah, Irish international. They're still trying to get him to 100 caps. He still wants to play for Ireland, still wants to carry on and stuff like that. So, and to be fair, Glenn Whelan and Paul Coots in that second leg, especially at Wickham, controlled the game. Whether that'll work against Everton, who knows, because they'll probably need more legs in there, a bit more energy, but maybe Callum Camps provides that. But they've got that sort of midfield of like Duffy, Coots and Whelan that, especially at League One level, has a lot to offer. And then the forward players are Josh Morris, who's very proven at this level, Paddy Madden, Shed Evans, both very proven at this level. It's kind of quite a well-rounded outfit, really.
It seems that way, and of course we'll have to be on our toes. You can never count your chickens when you're Everton in the EFL Cup, because we've got a wretched record in this tournament. But yeah, we're just hoping it's going to be a bit different this time. How do you reckon Fleetwood will line up? Then you've mentioned the forward players. How is it looking at the back, goalkeeper and whatnot?
Yeah, it's they brought in Joel Coleman this summer from Huddersfield and gave him the number 1 shirt ahead of Alex Cairns, who's been number 1 for a while. But Coleman got injured recently. He looks like he's going to be out for a while. So Cairns has kind of come back in. Louis Coyle went to Hull. He's his hometown club. So that was a big loss for him. He only signed 6 months before. But they've been playing Wes Burns at right back, who's normally a winger, but does a decent job in there. He's pretty combative. The two centre halves are actually quite young. Sam Stubbs, who's 21, who's just come in from Middlesbrough, and generally it's been James Hill, who's 18, who's just come through from the academy. So it's a very, very young pairing, and the first time they've been playing together recently, and they've done pretty well. They've been getting a lot of praise. Left back's Danny Andrew, who's again proven at this level. So it's probably going to be a back four, I'd guess. Although Joey favoured a 3-4-3 last season, I don't quite think he's got the numbers to do it at the moment. So it'll probably be a 4-3-3 of sorts. Camps, maybe Coots and Whelan or Duffy, depending on how fit he is. And then you're looking at probably Morris, Madden and Evans up front, or some combination like that. I mean, like I say, they don't have a great deal of depth at the moment. Joey will be going all out because he's an Everton fan, wants to do as well as he can. But
I was going to touch on that actually.
Different.
I was going to touch on Joey Barton. Obviously, like you say, he's a local lad, grew up supporting Everton. It's going to be an interesting occasion for him. It's the first time he'll have faced Everton as a manager. He's had a couple of interesting occasions when he was a player. I think there's been a couple of fiery games where he played against us as a player, of course. So this is going to be an interesting occasion. First time as a manager against Everton. He's going to want to do well, isn't he?
Yeah, he had the game last season against under-23s, which obviously got a lot of publicity for his words on David Unsworth, which was well documented in the build-up. I went and spoke to him actually prior to it, and I thought he might come out and just kind of dampen things down a bit. He said, "No, I stand by what I say," which is quite Joey, to be fair.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, I think he'll be really looking forward to it. I mean, he's really looking forward to that 23s game when it was at Goodison Park. But it's his first time. I think, to be honest, I think one of his goals is to eventually manage Everton if he can get there. And to be fair, he's on the right track because he's improved Fleetwood year on year. It's still going to be a long way. I'm not tipping him to do anything in particular, especially bringing in people like Ancelotti. Joey Barton's going to have to do a lot to push those bigger names out of the way.
Emulate Ancelotti.
Yeah, but he'll be really looking forward to it. Like I say, he's a massive Everton fan, and that was part of why he named a strong side in the last round, because he wanted to make sure he was there to have the chance to play Everton.
Absolutely. Thoughts on Everton this season? Of course, you're a Preston fan, so you would have saw us play against you in pre-season. What did you make of us?
I mean, pre-season difficult one to judge, but I have watched a few games in the Premier League as well. And to be fair, I think Everton are a funny one because it seems like recently in the summers that there's kind of the ideas are there, but the application is sometimes a bit lacking. Again, this is just a view from the outside, but it seems more like this summer that the application is there as well. Probably more to do with Ancelotti getting kind of the areas that he wants sorted. The midfield, the three midfielders that have been brought in are all going to do a pretty good job. James Rodriguez speaks for himself, doesn't he? And you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's come into some really good form and he's a pretty well-rounded forward. So there's a lot there, going for Everton, and with the Preston connection, there's also Jordan Pickford in there. So that's nice.
Oh, of course, yeah. And on that note, I was actually going to ask you next about the Everton players. Sort of, we've touched on the Fleetwood team, but what Everton player will Fleetwood be keeping an eye out for, do you think?
Well, it's a difficult one, really, because the Everton team in the league is going to be a lot different to the Everton team in the cup. But saying that, if you can drop James Rodriguez for a £45 million Gylfi Sigurdsson, you're not doing too bad. Any player in that Everton squad is more than a match for Fleetwood. So I don't think necessarily it'd be any one specific player. Joey generally likes to try and impose his game on the opposition. So I think it'll just be more a case of trying to stifle Everton and try and impose themselves rather than focus on any one individual. But again, it's difficult to predict which individual I'd look at on that team sheet and stand out, because it's probably going to be a well-changed Everton side, and who knows who might come in, really.
It's a good point. It's hard to touch on what the lineup was. Of course, we made 10 changes for the Salford game in the previous round, so it'd be interesting to see if we maybe do that again, or whether we keep some of the first teamers in for this game. Of course, Salford are the League Two side, Fleetwood are the level above them. I mean, we've got to be a bit more on our toes this time.
Yeah, although I still think if you can bring in someone like Gibson, it will be these people that have played in the Champions League and stuff like that. It should still be enough to match Fleetwood. But, as you said earlier, it's a one-off cup game, and anything can happen. So, I think in these scenarios, whenever you play a lower ranked team, write them off at your own peril, really.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting you were talking about this, the occasion and playing a Highbury. We were talking earlier about the wind machine or something you were saying.
Yeah.
Like, what is all that about?
So basically, because it's...
None of our fans will be clued up on that.
It's on the coast, basically, the ground, and it's got... It's not like a full-seater stadium, and so there's a bit of room for the wind to come in, but basically it's just really windy. It's kind of like the reputation that Stoke Stadium's got, and where there's always it can just get really windy, so you can kick the ball in the air and then it's coming back to you and all this. It gets a bit like that, and it can cause problems for teams. It really can, and it could, I suppose, in situations like with Wednesday, it can cause it could be a bit of a leveler at times.
Yeah, I think that's what Fleetwood will be hoping for. And we played the game against Crystal Palace last season on the opening day, and the wind was atrocious, and we were just wearing at the races. So obviously you've got to be careful in these kinds of occasions. And like you say, we've got to hope our players are acclimatised to that. And if Fleetwood the players are very used to that. I think that could be there could be a bit of teething problems for Everton going into this game. So we've definitely got to be on our toes, it seems. So, bit of a tough one always when you're going into like a sort of League One versus Premier League game. You got a prediction for this game?
It's difficult. I mean, like I say, you don't really know which teams are going to turn up. Everton are obviously going in strong favourites because, like you mentioned, you make 10 changes against Salford, but they're still filled with Premier League players, Premier League experience, Champions League experience even. So I think it probably more depends on what Everton side turns up. I think if Fleetwood play at the best and Everton play at the best, Everton are likely to win anyway. But if Everton aren't at the races and Fleetwood can get something going, then there's every chance, as with any game, I suppose.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's probably a difficult one to predict, isn't it? I mean, we usually do this for all the Premier League games, and you can guarantee what team's going to play. And
yeah, exactly. They're going to play the best players, and
we're better off trying to predict the starting 11s, to be honest.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll leave it at that. We're going to end with our a little question. We always spring this on the people who we interview on these opposition view shows. What's the best, worst, or strangest meeting you've had with a famous footballer or a celebrity?
Do you know what? I'd probably go. I mean, whether it's strange or not, I don't know. But certainly some of the most, the meetings I've had where I've come away thinking, what? It's probably some of the press conferences we've had with Joey. Because we can sit there. I mean, there's generally two of us there. There's radio and there's me for the paper. And we can sit there with him, and sometimes we're there just short of an hour. And he talks. I mean, he talks on the topic, and he talks really well. And he's a great person to talk to, and a great person to speak to. And he'll talk about anything. I mean, there was one time when he was discussing Leipzig and their formation, and we got sent a link afterwards off the back of it, just saying, just have a look at this and stuff. And he's really good to talk to. But there's some things that he comes out, you just think, wow, okay. And it's just because he's just there having a conversation with you, and he just kind of says what he thinks. And
he's eccentric as well, isn't he?
Yeah, it comes across a bit in the media, but he is just. My experience of him, he's a very genuine guy, and so probably some of the, and I can't really name one specifically off the top of my head, but Joey has come out with some absolute crackers at times.
Yeah, it's class, isn't it? I mean,
that can't make it into print either. So
on the other side of it, then obviously you talk to Joey all the time. Is there anyone you've met like on a one-off occasion? Maybe that.
To be honest, no. There's not many people. I've not really ever bumped into anyone. To be fair, I'm not really that type. If I was to see a celebrity, I just kind of go, oh. And I'd not really approach anyone or anything.
You wouldn't
like
get
that.
your phone out for a selfie or nothing.
Yeah, no. I'm not really that type. No, especially having it not take place when I've been working in football. I've not, maybe been lucky enough to meet a celebrity or whatever. But I don't know. I don't really buy into the celebrity culture thing anyway, so it doesn't really bother me.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll leave it at that. Anyway, it's been great to talk to you, Tom. It's
no problem.
Best of luck for Fleetwood, but also for Preston, of course.
Yeah. Best of luck for the season. Hopefully, a bit of European football back at Goodison.
Yeah, that's what we need. Hopefully, fans back at Goodison for it as well. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
There you have it, guys. Let us know your opinions on this game. Obviously, we always say the cliche potential banana skin, but let us know how you're feeling going into this game. Off the back of 3 wins, of course, so hopefully a bit of positivity there. But nonetheless, let us know whatever you're thinking going into this game. Give this video a like as well. Subscribe for more great content and ring the bell and whatnot. And until next time, thank you for watching on the Toffee Blues.